Hi, everyone. Sorry
Hi,
that we're late. I've upgraded my webcam at long last, so I look less fuzzy, but worse. So it's like, oh, is that what I look like? Eh? Um, but yeah, I've just had to fiddle around with my settings a bunch, so this is why we're starting late. I'm Megan Murphy. This is Where Are All the Women? And I'm here, as always, with Mary Lou Singleton.
Hi, everybody.
If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We would really appreciate that. I would really appreciate that. I've been feeling sort of like all the algorithms are loosening up a bit. Have you gotten this sense at all? I don't know if you, I don't know what your experience with the algorithm has been like over the past 5 or so years, but mine's been bad.
It's been bad. I don't know. I can't tell. My algorithm isn't about, I'm not a big online presence, so it's not about who's coming to me. It's more like what's coming into my feed. And I'm getting a lot more really hardcore right-wing stuff. I'm like, what am I liking that I'm getting this? And I'm getting more animal videos. So my algorithm is all over the place right now.
Well, the algorithm clearly can see inside your brain. I meant
Totally.
more like what I'm able to access, because I was like, YouTube basically shoved me into a corner and wouldn't let me out during COVID because some of my interviews were vaguely critical of the vaccine mandates, which was, illegal. And so I couldn't, like, I had been getting tons and tons. I started my YouTube channel pretty late. Like, I started a YouTube channel and the same drugs after I was banned from Twitter. And when I was banned from Twitter in 2018, I was really only using Twitter as far as social media, like maybe Facebook a little bit, but I was sort of over Facebook at that point. It was sort of had become irrelevant. Like, it doesn't really go anywhere, and the people there are annoying and just want to argue with each other. And definitely, I don't know, I don't like Facebook, blah blah blah. But it's, like, I didn't have a YouTube channel, I didn't have a public Facebook page at that point, I didn't have a public Instagram at that point, mostly just because I didn't want to. Like, I used Twitter because I liked using Twitter and I didn't want to spend a bunch of time on social media. But when I was banned from Twitter, obviously I had to like hustle and start looking elsewhere. But almost immediately I was removed from the algorithm for wrongthink, gender identity stuff also, of course, I'm sure. And lately I've been feeling like they've been allowing me back in. Like, I've been able to get out there past wherever they'd kept me hidden away a little bit more. So I guess that's what I was wondering, if something, because obviously, or so they say, things are changing for Meta in any case. And I'm like, I wonder if this is, things are changing at YouTube also.
Are your followers going up? Like, you were stuck at the same number of
the video,
subscribers
yeah,
for a
like
long
I
time,
couldn't
right?
get any more. Like, I was limited in the amount of views that every single one of my videos was getting. I could barely crack like 1,000 views, and I'd had a whole bunch that had gone viral, into the whatever 20,000 views before that. And I couldn't, my subscribers, the number of subscribers were not going up at all for like 3 years. They weren't going up at all. Like, I just wasn't budging. Like, my channel was not budging, and it happened sort of all of a sudden. So I was like, it's obvious to me that after I got dinged by YouTube a couple times, I got a couple of like community strikes for misinformation. I forget what it was like COVID health misinformation kind of thing.
Right. It was probably an interview with me.
No, it was an interview with Konstantin Kisin, and then an interview with a woman whose name I'm forgetting, from Australia, who writes for The Spectator, who, was critical of the mandates and the way that vaccination was happening, was being rolled out in Australia. It was, very minor infractions. Like, I went back and looked through the transcripts of both interviews, and it was, barely anything at all. It was ridiculous. But it was at that point when, my channel just wouldn't budge. So But in any case, here we are. And yeah, please like and subscribe if you're watching. How are you doing, Mary Lou?
Good. I'm just trying to stay interested and not too invested in what's going on. Just really the rapid fire news cycle is hard to keep up with. So.
Oh yeah, it's impossible. It's super stressful trying to keep up with it. I keep trying to read everything and being like, well, you could try to read everything and then never work or run any errands or live your own life and also still not be able to read everything, or you could just kind of forget about this.
Well, I've been listening to a podcast from like 2 days ago, and it's already irrelevant in terms of international affairs and what's going on in the country and what the latest outrage is. Right. So I guess the Gaza ceasefire, I'm just getting like blips of that right now and wondering, why is Trump negotiating that when he's not the president right now? Biden's the president, but Trump is already negotiating internationally. And I think this is unprecedented in American politics. Your hair looks great.
No, it looks terrible. That's why I keep trying to sort it out and being like, okay, Meghan, you're gonna have to stop. I haven't followed this at all, so I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, I don't know much. I just saw like I just got on Twitter and there was a whole bunch of news and posts on a ceasefire has been negotiated, and Trump was over there negotiating, and he's not the president, which I'm fine with him doing the negotiation in terms of who I feel more secure about. I think that Biden has been a national security disaster. I can't believe that the United States survived this literally demented president for this long. But I think it's fascinating that he's over there a week before I guess 5 days before he's actually the president. But it looks like they negotiated something. The hostages who are still alive and the bodies of the hostages that are dead will be returned to Israel, and Israel will return 30 Palestinian fighters from custody for every one hostage that's being returned to them. And they will be allowing much more aid into Gaza. And it's a ceasefire as well. There will be hopefully no firing. It's progress. It's definitely a huge deal.
Oh, well, thanks, Trump.
I know, right? Maybe Elon Musk went, what's happening internationally in terms of power dynamics.
I mean, we didn't really have a president before this, so they may as well let Trump start early. Right?
Exactly.
He's gonna do the job anyway in 5 days?
Exactly. And it has been worrisome to me as an American to have us looking so weak on the international stage. Enemies of America are where we had no leadership. We have no leadership for the last 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was amazing how quickly things changed as soon as Trump was elected, just in general, the change in climate and the change in terms of what people felt comfortable talking about. And, obviously Zuckerberg, like, racing to try to catch up with the fact that we were doing free speech now.
Right. All the cool kids are doing it.
Free speech is in, censorship is out.
Right. I don't trust him. I think he's just saying that. And I also think, like you said, Facebook is passe. It's not as big of a deal as Elon buying Twitter, which obviously was a really good move for him, because buying Twitter allowed him to then buy Trump. So it puts him in a position of enormous power.
Yeah, but I don't think it was I'm not as cynical as, whatever. I'm not an Elon Musk stan. It's not like there's lots of things that he does and says that bother me, but I do think that he bought Twitter because he believes in free speech. And I think that he changed a lot in terms of, our ability to speak and our confidence in supporting free speech. And because it wasn't like a moneymaker when he bought it. It did give him political power. Yes.
I like you. I'm not sure that was his goal. I don't know how he could strategize that well. Maybe it was a bet that paid off. Maybe he just wanted to expand free speech in the United States, but it definitely opened things up in order for Trump to, for people who were fed up with the censorship and the repression and the thought policing to organize more, and that fed into Trump's campaign. And then he's much more powerful with Trump in power than he has been. And he's already pretty powerful. He's the world's richest man. What did J.B. Pritzker at the Democrat convention this summer called Trump a second-tier billionaire, that he wasn't a real billionaire like the Pritzkers. And watching this, how like Elon's a top-tier billionaire, right? So
he's legit.
Right, exactly.
Imagine being snobby about various levels of billionaires. These people are disgusting.
Well, and imagine speaking at the Democrat their big convention right after Bernie Sanders and saying that with a straight face of, we have the real billionaires on our side. We don't have like second tier billionaires.
No shame.
Pulling the strings. Yeah.
No shame.
Yeah. Anyway, that's exciting. It's just rapid fire and you can't pay attention to everything that's happening. And I'm just trying to step back. I've been knitting a lot and just trying to stay informed.
Did you do moon things?
No, I took a bath with the moon like shining through the window. That was nice. I thought about the moon. And then the coyotes were going nuts in my neighborhood. So that was kind of a moon thing to listen to them.
Yeah. I've turned into a full nocturnal since the holidays. So I'm up till 5 a.m. every night.
Oh, wow.
It was bad enough before when I was up until, 2, 3 a.m. And then, I think I would wake up around noon. But because the holidays were so wild, and I didn't have any routine over the holidays at all, which was the goal. That was the plan. But then, my 2-week holiday that I gave myself ended, and I was just still up until 5 a.m. And I went upstairs. I took the dogs out, and I went up and then looked at the moon at probably at 4 or 5 a.m. just at my house. This is every night, I guess, here, but all the roosters were going and the dogs were going. And I don't know, it seemed like a special moon. I'm not like a super moony person. Obviously, I like it. And I feel like on the full moon, it's always and especially because of the way it, connects to our cycles as women, it always sort of feels like a me sort of indoor, less extroverted time for me, which was something that I really needed after the chaos of the holidays and all the emotional and social drama that I experienced during that time, and sort of that I'm trying to now level off from.
Did you watch it set into the ocean?
No, I can't. I can't see the ocean from my house. I'm too far away. I can hear the ocean sometimes, but yeah, I'm too far away to see it. So I just saw it high up, and then thought about how I've been learning the same lessons over and over and over again, and I need to stop doing that, or at least at best you can. I don't know. It's not like we'll ever perfect ourselves, but often I think oh, I've done it, I've nailed it. And then you're reminded that, in fact, you haven't nailed it and you're still kind of a fuck up and you just got to pay attention. Anyway, so obviously I enjoy Twitter regardless, now X, but it feels like you can say almost anything on there. Obviously, I brought back the R word in full force, which I've been working on for some time now, probably about 10 years. I've been trying to bring that back in common vernacular, and now it's finally been accepted. You can call things gay as in not homosexual, but lame.
Well, people are running with it. They're running with it, and it does. Yeah, it feels more free. Yeah. And I really do feel like there's so much less constraint socially right now, and that's exciting. Been following.
I feel like you can have a sense of humor. I feel like you can. I feel like Twitter before. It's, you know, everything was taken so seriously, and if people made a joke, people would pretend that they didn't get the joke and, you know, make a big deal out of it. And now I feel like you can be kind of sarcastic and jokey and people get it, and people stop pretending to be over serious about every little frickin' thing. I don't think in pre-Twitter I ever would have tweeted about fat kids. I think I guaranteed pre when it was Twitter, not X, I wouldn't have tweeted about fat kids. And if I had, Lord, the feminists would have really gone for me. Although I think that part of that is that they've just given up on me because they've decided that I'm such a far right provocateur. But
they don't even troll you anymore.
No, they stopped. It's because I don't care, because they troll me and I'm like, I don't give a shit what you think. And then they give up, right? You know, what those kinds of people want is, I don't know, either groveling. You know, I think they want to feel that they have some sort of power over you. And if they don't, then what's the point? Like, if you don't care, if they don't like you, or if they're mad at you, and it's not going to make any difference in terms of your behavior or language or whatever it is, then, I mean, isn't that kind of how things work with a lot of bullies or control freaks, maybe? I don't know.
Oh, I think if you don't engage, they move on to someone else. They enjoy the struggle and the suffering and the strife. It's that called when they train people to deal with family members and loved ones with personality disorders. They call it gray rocking. They just don't give them any reaction at all, and then they'll stop bothering you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that works on narcissists and abusers. I mean, with these women, I think I would just troll them back. And they didn't like that. It wasn't so much an ignoring as it's like, you're an idiot. Like, I just wouldn't be nice about it. I just wouldn't be like, whatever, or I'd make fun of them back. I mean, it's either like engage and have a good time with it, but if you're going to be over serious, I'm just going to mock you because I think it's such a stupid and unattractive quality in a person. But I mean,
so how much hate did you get for the fat kid comment?
Not that much. I got some, I mean, what was most amusing, okay, so I tweeted, for those who weren't following, I said, in response to a tweet, this is like, you know, an engagement trap that I chose to fall for, and you know, it wasn't an accident. I knew what I was doing here. They posted unpopular opinion on parenting that would get you attacked, essentially, is the context. And I wrote, if you have a fat child, you're a bad parent, which I've thought for a very long time. Not necessarily, like, I don't want to say bad parent, but I think you're failing at parenting if you have a fat kid, because you as a parent control what goes into your kid's mouth. You control their activities. I'm not talking about teenagers, because once you become a teenager, you have a lot more autonomy in terms of what you're eating, because you can, you know, have a job and have your own money, so you can go to McDonald's after school or do whatever you want, and you have a lot more autonomy in the kinds of activities you're doing. But I see no real reason for a child to be fat. Do you think that's true? Or are there good reasons why a child might be fat beyond their parents feeding them too much junk food?
Well, their parents might have consented to drugs that are destroying their metabolisms and their endocrine system that make them more likely to gain weight. But I have issues with that as well. I mean, there are cases where kids with leukemia who have to have massive doses of steroids. I don't think that you're a bad parent for consenting to this thing that's going to make your kid fat versus they're going to die of leukemia. But that's like the tiniest subset of children. Most kids who are fat because of medication are on psych meds, which I don't think should be prescribed to children. And I think that parents need to do their due diligence and not put their children on them, those medications that destroy their metabolisms. Or they're on medications that are treating symptoms being caused by bad diet and lifestyle issues and things that could be healed with natural medicine. And those are wrecking their metabolisms too. So there are some medical things, and sometimes it's legitimate, but usually, even when it's because of medication, I have some critiques about parents being willing to just put their kids on all these drugs that are often not necessary, in my opinion. Yeah, I think though, you know, now we're looking at like multiple generations of people who don't know how to how to nourish themselves, who only eat junk food, who are the fourth or fifth generation of people in their family to be morbidly obese. And that's really hard. Is it that parent's failure, or is it their grandparents' failure? How do you break that cycle?
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you have obese parents, you're a lot more likely to be obese yourself because obviously you're all sort of engaging in the same eating habits. You know, if your parents are fat, then they're buying bad food and they have an unhealthy lifestyle, and that's your lifestyle now. I mean, I guess when you're little, your lifestyle is your parents' lifestyle in a lot of ways. I mean, the responses were way more positive than I expected. I thought I would get a lot more flack, which just goes to show how great X has become, where most people were like, yeah, duh. Or like, I think that's a pretty popular opinion. I think people have stopped like faking it and stopped trying to pretend to be good and nice, which they were trying to do before. But I mean, you know, there was one woman who was responding saying, there are all sorts of reasons a child might be fat. And then she was listing a bunch of medication related. First, she says medication, genetics, hormone signals. And I asked her, I was like, what kind of medication are you giving your 9-year-old that's making it fat? And she responded, one of her responses was antihistamines. Is that legitimate? Do antihistamines make you fat?
No, like, I have to sit with that. I'm like, no, I cannot think. There may be some rare class of antihistamines that might make a child fat, but most of the antihistamines we give to kids don't affect their metabolism in that way. No, that's interesting. I don't think antihistamines make kids fat. They make them sluggish, so they don't want to.
Well, I mean, I won't take antihistamines even if I'm feeling sneezy because I hate the way that antihistamines make me feel. So I don't know why you're giving your kid antihistamines. I mean, I guess they have severe allergies.
Yeah, I mean, people are on drugs. Americans are just drugged to the gills, and they have, they put their kids on a lot of drugs and don't think it through. I would much rather heal the allergies. And I've seen again and again that people can heal allergies through diet and acupuncture. And there are herbs that have antihistamine properties that actually help you heal the allergies. So you need less of them. They don't make you dependent on them like Claritin and Benadryl. Yeah, but people just put their kids on drugs. Americans just take drugs. And then they get so defensive about it. And then they also get evangelical about it, that they want everybody to be on drugs. Right? Like, my kid's on this, you should consider putting your kid on antihistamines. Right. Yeah, I don't think antihistamines will make a kid fat. Certain classes might, some of the really old antihistamines might increase appetite, but most of the antihistamines that we use now don't do that. What are the other ones? I'm thinking like Depakote. That is an old seizure med that is used now in behavioral medicine to control behavior in like severely autistic kids or really behaviorally disturbed kids. When I worked in psych, I saw kids gain 75 pounds in 6 months on Depakote. I feel like it's criminal to put kids on that. The antipsychotics will make kids gain that kind of weight. But why is a parent putting their child on antipsychotics?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
That seems crazy to me. One woman, Kaylee Triller, you know her.
Yeah.
She said, easy on the judgment. My stepson has had severe arthritis since he was 2. He's on a crazy cocktail of drugs, including prednisone, that made him look super chubby. The before and after drugs pictures are startling. You never know what people carry.
Yeah, prednisone will make you gain a lot of weight. It's not going to heal anything. It just suppresses. It really shouldn't be used long-term in kids. There are other things you can do. People don't have access to information about natural medicine. I love Kaylee. I think she's a really cool person, but she's really invested in mainstream medicine and gets pretty defensive about drugs and birth. And she gets defensive when you mention it's possible to live an unmedicalized life. Not only is it possible, but it should be all right. We should all strive to not need drugs, in my opinion. And we should all strive to be as healthy as possible and free ourselves from needing pharmaceuticals. She doesn't agree.
Yeah. I mean, I've changed my mind about this in a lot of ways since I was younger. I mean, we were always like, my dad was always critical of big pharma and didn't want to put us on any kind of drugs or medication unless it was absolutely necessary. So that was always sort of ingrained in me. But then there was, all sorts, I never really questioned. I mean, I used to take ibuprofen probably like daily when I was younger. Like anytime I had any kind of ache or pain, I'd take ibuprofen, cramps. I was just taking tons and tons of ibuprofen every day, as opposed to, it just never occurred to me because no one ever suggested this to me before. No doctor, of course, ever suggested this to me before, that maybe it would be sort of lifestyle things or nutrition things or food things or, dehydration. Like so much of this is like if you drink more water, that helps. That would sort of ease those kinds of pains. So, I mean, I'm glad to know about that now. Even when I get cramps now, I should have tried to avoid taking ibuprofen unless it's horrible, but it's not that horrible. It was horrible when I was younger. When I was 18, I would like black out when I got my period.
From the pain, yeah.
From the pain, but also I think I was iron. It was like iron deficiency. Like I wasn't eating enough meat and I wasn't getting enough protein, and so I would feel faint and pass out. But the pain was a lot worse then too.
Right.
I think most of it was just nutrition stuff. I was surviving on like pizza.
Yeah, your uterus is going to speak up about that, right? I think that our wombs tell us if we're out of balance. And unfortunately, that's considered a really radical idea, to believe that what your body is expressing is a message about how you're out of balance and how you're not nourishing yourself well, you're not moving the way you should, or maybe you hate your job, or you're not aligned with what you should be doing. And instead of trying to get into better alignment and get into better health, people just take drugs and take drugs and take drugs. And most of these drugs they're not short courses. They're not like antibiotics, which also can make kids fat. Too many antibiotics mess up your digestion. They kill off the friendly bacteria, and then you have the unfriendly bacteria that crave sugar all the time. And it's like you're being driven around by bad aliens that want to eat bad things. But most drugs aren't like antibiotics where it's a week. They're intended to be taken for the rest of your freaking life. And I don't understand why so many people are fine with that with their children.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, the problem that I have with parents who let their kids get fat is, I think a couple people responding was like, don't judge fat kids. And I'm like, I'm not judging fat kids. Like one girl was like, how dare you call a kid fat? And I was like, well, it's just an observation of material reality. I'm not like pointing at a kid and being like, hey, fatty. Like I'm not trying to bully a specific child, but it's because like if you have a fat kid, then that kid is going to struggle with their weight for their entire life. Like you're setting them up for a life of struggle and shame and health problems. Being fat, I'm sorry, but fat phobia is real forever. Like most people don't want to be fat. So call that fat phobia. I think you could call that fat phobia. I'm afraid of getting fat. When I start to feel, fatter than I'm comfortable with, there's a specific weight that I feel like comfortable being. And if I'm over that by a bit, I don't like it. And it's not because I'm like, oh, I'm disgusting, my body's disgusting. It's usually just about comfort, like about my clothes fitting and feeling comfortable and things like that. But, I think it's totally normal and fine to be fat phobic so long as you're not, the inverse is also terrible, where you're obsessed with extreme thinness, and that's bad for your health also. And, especially for women, and especially as they're getting older and they're losing muscle mass. But like that if you're a fat kid, your fat kid's going to become a fat teenager, and then they're going to feel shame and they might get picked on, and they're not going to be able to, compete in phys ed at the same level as the other kids. And it's just, you're going to be struggling with your weight your whole life. And that just sucks. Like, that's just really hard. And I don't think you should do that to your kid. I think you set them up for a good future as best you can.
And it's metabolic dysfunction. Like, these kids aren't healthy. There's something wrong if children are grossly obese. There's something wrong. Kids are overweight. It's almost quaint now. What used to be called overweight is now normal. And now, we're just getting concerned when people are really seriously obese. I was looking at old pictures. My grandkids wanted to see pictures of me when I was a kid. And I was looking at the class pictures, and there was, the fat kid in my class. And I was looking at this kid who had been labeled the fat kid, and she was so much smaller than 30% of the kids that I see now. Just, I walk outside of school or look around. There were no extremely obese children in my entire school. And the kids who were labeled the fat kids were not obese children. They were, carrying an extra 10 pounds or 15 pounds. They weren't sick, really sick. Obesity is a disease. I'm not saying I'm going to start shilling for Ozempic and things like that, but it, your liver is not healthy. Your heart's not healthy. Your thyroid's not healthy. You're in constant inflammation. We learned during COVID, it was one of the biggest risk factors for a severe viral infection with that virus. And it's true for all viruses. Your immune system's not well. We're not just being, petty and thinking people need to be more physically attractive. We're concerned about the health of the youth of our population. And it's not okay that this many kids are fat. It's tragic and terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like people, and then of course I get the comments of, it's like, well, you're not a parent. So, and I was like, well, first of all, I get to have opinions about whatever I want to have opinions
Totally.
about. But also, like, I was a kid and I had parents, and I know what my parents did, and I know what my childhood was like. And I'm grateful for that aspect of it, where we weren't allowed to have junk food or sugar cereal. We didn't eat out, really. We certainly didn't have fast food. And I was outside playing a lot of the time. And I'm just grateful that I didn't have to struggle with weight issues. Like, I really am. I remember being a teenager and being insecure about being too thin, which in retrospect, I was like, because just I felt bony and I didn't feel like sexy like the curvy girls. But in retrospect, I'm like, well, that's good, because then later on, when my metabolism started to slow down, it wasn't a huge disaster. I just felt like I got a bit chubby for a bit and was like, oh, I guess I need to exercise and not only eat pizza pops.
Right.
But, like I'm glad that I had that in my head, where like junk food and fast food and constant sugar all the time wasn't totally normalized.
What do you think, now that I'm reevaluating everything about my belief system and seeing the problems with being a reactionary and how things have swung from one kind of bad to another, what do you think about social shaming and kids teasing and even being mean to each other to encourage other children to be healthy and normal and behave normally and not be overweight? But do you think that actually have a social purpose and wasn't just a bad thing we needed to eliminate from society?
I think so. I go back and forth on this, but I've been thinking about this. Actually, I was thinking about this in the context a bit of the Neil Gaiman allegations. There's more of them. I think we talked about him and these allegations a bit already last year, but now there's more that's come out. Because I was reading this big, huge, long article about him in The Vulture. I don't know if you looked at it, but if you didn't, it's understandable because it's huge. And I was thinking about the kinds of, I was like, what kind of woman falls for that kind of man? Like, what kind of woman is interested in, and I'm not necessarily, I know that sounded judgmental, and I'm not intending it to be judgmental. I was genuinely, I'm like, what is, because I'm not attracted to that kind of guy. I'm attracted to, narcissists. I mean, not to say that Neil Gaiman isn't a narcissist,
Right,
but this
right.
kind of feminist, progressive, I'm super open-minded and into BDSM and like, I'm not attracted to like weirdos or that whole like artsy theater kid scene.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the kind of guy who, you know, the fans that were obsessed with him were these like Comic-Con
Mm-hmm.
fantasy nerds, weirdos, and it's the kind of culture of people and women who, you know, as the phrase goes, are so open-minded that their brains fell out. You know,
Yeah.
they've rejected conservative values to such an extent that it's, you know, they don't want to be closed-minded, they don't want to be uptight, they don't want to be prudish, they don't want to be snobbish. You know, we're the weirdos, and everything we do is unconventional, and we're so wild and different and sexually free, yada yada yada. But they're all just really kind of gross nerds. Like, they're losers. And they all fuck each other, and you know, they're into BDSM, they're into polyamory, they're sort of, you know, I think they see themselves as anarchists. They're not snobs, and they embrace, we're the weirdos, you know, we're not the norms. And I was thinking about, you know, I was like, this is why I always, like, I think being a snob is a good thing. And it's not, I don't mean a snob like in a materialist sense or in a money sense, but if you feel uncomfortable about something, I think that's okay to feel uncomfortable about it. And I don't think you should twist yourself in knots to make yourself feel okay with it because you don't want to be perceived as prudish or uptight or conservative. And, you know, I think a lot of these people, including, I was never an Amanda Palmer fan, but based on what I've read of her, you know, she was interested in these kind of utopian, polyamorous, feminist communities. I was like, how did she fall for this Neil Gaiman, who, you know, sounds like a narcissist and a creep and abuser? How did she fall for him? And I was like, well, she was involved, first of all. Like, she seems like she was involved in that, and she liked it, and she seemed to often encourage some of these young women to engage with him in this way, and, you know, no boundaries, like that kind of thing. And I think, which brings me back to why kids should bully each other into being normal instead of being weirdos. I'm thinking out loud, right? But it's like, yeah, maybe when kids bully each other into acting normal and not acting like weirdos or looking like weirdos or being fat or being outcast, maybe that's helpful, because you should kind of learn how to get along in society to a certain extent, not in terms of like, you know, follow all the rules. But I don't think kids necessarily are invested in bullying each other into following all the rules, just into like not being ugly weirdos. No, I might be totally off here. I'm really just thinking out loud here. Don't everyone take this as my official opinion, but
I think there should be social pressure and reinforcement to be functional and healthy and helpful and, you know, a productive member of society who doesn't need to be carried by everybody else, right? And I'm not saying the lives of like the truly disabled people are worthless and don't have dignity. I'm saying that when everyone's an abnormal weirdo, society falls apart. And that's what we're seeing, right? Society was healthier when there was pressure to be a jock and be, you know, be diplomatic and be agreeable and do your job. It was a more functional world.
As opposed to the everyone is special and unique.
Yeah.
Like, look at me, I'm so special and different.
I bristled against that. I remember the whole, you know, why be normal, and normal as a setting on the washing machine, and you know, screw the jocks, like the, you know, even though I was the valedictorian in my high school, I was a pretty functional kid. I really bristled against it a lot. I also was somebody who wasn't very socially conforming. But now I can look and just see that, oh, everything we were rebelling against was what kept society intact and together. And now, yeah, everyone's terminally unique and celebrating their illnesses and celebrating their mental disorders and being fine with everybody being fat. It's like not that long ago, my lifetime, if you were covered in tattoos or morbidly obese or were a woman with a beard, you were in the circus. Like it was like those people were in the circus, and regular people would go, you know, get a glimpse of the, like, pay money to see a very, very, very fat person or to see a person covered in tattoos because it was so out of the norm. And now that's the norm, right? Like the healthy, functional people are going to be on a reservation or in the zoo or something. That, like, we have these several specimens of metabolically healthy adults who can, you know, take care of their own hygiene and make a living for themselves and be productive members of society. That's the weirdo now. It's very, very disconcerting to me to think about it.
Yeah. Some people are asking what happened with the Neil Gaiman stuff, so I'll try to explain. But I essentially, so if you're watching on YouTube, I've linked to the article in the show notes so you can read the full Vulture report there. There's also a podcast that's been reporting on it since last year, which Mary Lou and I talked about a bit last year. I think that is called Tortoise. And Tortoise Media. So, I mean, he's sort of your run-of-the-mill. I am attracted to having all the power, and you know, he was doing this exclusively to women in their 20s and younger. There was one 18-year-old, the rest of them were in his 20s, and this was from about the time he was in his 40s onward. So, you know, often he was like 30 years older than the women that he was allegedly abusing and assaulting. You know, it's interesting because some of the allegations seem like obvious rape. You know, there was one woman who Amanda Palmer befriended, Scarlett Pavlovich. I don't know. I guess that depends on if you're Serbian or not, how you say that last name. She has a history of a lot of trauma, and, you know, she doesn't speak with anyone in her family. There was abuse there. She was in poverty. I think she was homeless, you know, couch surfing, and I think even sleeping on the beach a bit here and there. This was in New Zealand. And she was a theater kid and a weirdo, I guess, and into sort of this kind of fantasy scene, I think. She was a fan of Amanda Palmer's. Amanda Palmer befriended her, and she started babysitting for them. And they were separated at this point, Amanda Palmer and Neil Gaiman. Am I saying his last name properly?
I think that's how you say it. Yeah,
Okay.
Gaiman.
I was never a fan of his. I've never read any of his books. Did you?
I did. I really liked his work. I loved American Gods. I think it's a great novel. I really enjoyed it. I liked a lot of his shorter stories. He has a book called Trigger Warning that has some great short stories. I think he's a great writer. He's clearly not a really great person, you know, but that's right. I can separate the art from the artist.
For sure. I've never read anything he's written. I really didn't know very much about him before all these allegations came out. Are his books fantasy novels, or what are they?
How would I describe it? It's like magical realism. American Gods is really interesting in that it's about all of the deities that were brought to this continent by all the waves of immigration and what happened to them when they stopped getting adoration for humans, and what they're doing to regain that, because they die if humans stop giving them adoration. Just as, you know, someone with a Jungian bent and into mythology, I thought it was a great novel. I found it really entertaining. I thought it was great. But yeah, it's mostly fantasy and magical realism that he writes.
Yeah, so she has her babysit for them, and I think the first time she ever meets Neil, she goes over to his house and he suggests she take a bath in his outdoor bathtub because he has to have like a phone meeting. And so she goes and gets in the bath, and he shows up naked, gets in the bathtub, and
Why did she have to take a
sexually
bath?
assaults her. He just was like, "Oh, you have to wait here. I don't want you to be bored. You know what would be so nice for you is if you go take a bath in this beautiful outdoor bathtub that I have. It's so enchanting out there." And she was like, "I'm okay." And he's like, "No, it'd be great." So she goes and gets in the bathtub, and then yeah, he comes out and is naked and gets in the bathtub with her, and then anally rapes her, I guess,
Oh
is
my
what the
God.
allegation is. But then after that, she continues to babysit for them and kind of moves in with them and texts him and says, "I'm consumed by thoughts of you, the things you will do to me. I'm so hungry. What a terrible creature you've turned me into." Which isn't to say that what he did was okay. I think it's gross and wrong. But also, most of the stories, like I can sort of see both sides in a way. I can see the response from the consent people saying, well, it did kind of seem consensual. And some of them did seem consensual. And at the same time, he was obviously taking advantage of fans who were obsessed with him and very young and didn't feel comfortable saying no and would be sort of in a confusing situation. There was one woman who I don't think they're using her real name, but it's Catherine Kendall. So she was 22 and I think she had also met Amanda Palmer too, and Amanda had given her permission. She was going to one of Neil Gaiman's readings, and Amanda had given her permission to kiss him and nibble on his ear a little bit because he would like that. And they got into this relationship of emailing and Skyping and talking on the phone in very flirtatious and kind of sexual ways. And at the same time, she told him she didn't want to have sex with him, but she was also being very flirtatious with him. And, I know that you're not supposed to say this, but, often women do say that they don't want to have sex and then they change their minds or, they're saying it because they're trying to seem chaste, or, you don't want to, and then you are flirting and you get turned on and then you do, it's not quite that black and white. And at some point he invites her and her friends to come on his tour bus after a signing that he was doing that she and her friends attended. And so they went, and he asked her to come sit on his lap, and she did. And then he brought her into the back of the bus and lay on top of her. I'm reading from the article now. He kept saying, "Kiss me like you mean it." Kendall remembers she tried to get into it, but she was panicked. Eventually, Gaiman rolled off her and said, "I'm a very wealthy man, and I'm used to getting what I want." And there's no doubt in my mind that he's gross and disgusting and abusive. I mean, a lot of these relationships he would define as, BDSM kind of relationships that were violent and abusive, and he wanted to be called master. And it was all about the fantasy for him and the fetish. This is one of the reasons that I think fetishes are wrong, really, because I think what happens is that you get obsessed with the fetish. So you start to it's like you can only get off in this one really weird specific way, and the person on the other end of this stops mattering. The fetish becomes the central thing.
And I think it should be, to get back to our previous theme, it should be shamed, and it should be considered contemptible. Does that mean I think it's criminal? No, nothing you're describing so far seems criminal. And I mean, if he did anally rape her or rape her in any way in a bathtub, that part's criminal. The rest of it seems it's contemptible and disgusting. But I think we should, be allowed to say that, and he should be publicly called out about it, and people should know he's a creep. And that doesn't mean I think it should be illegal.
Yeah, I think so too. And I was curious to know what you thought about this. I think that maybe you would need to listen to the whole podcast to understand the context, because I don't know if I'll explain it in a way that's going to properly contextualize this for you. But, I think 9 years later or something like that, this Kendall person talked to him on the phone about what happened, and she felt that it was abuse or that she'd been assaulted, and he offered, and she was like, now I'm having to spend all this money on therapy, and he offered to pay her $15,000 for 4 years to cover the cost of the therapy. He on the phone was like, I had no idea that you felt like this. I had no idea that you felt uncomfortable or that you weren't enjoying it or that it was anything but consensual. And she was kind of like giggly and nice about it on the phone, which was strange. Mm-hmm. And then she agrees to accept the $15,000 for 4 years, except she wants it all at once. So he pays her out $60,000. And I was just like, I don't know. I feel a bit weird about that too. I don't know that I'd want to take $60,000 from my rapist or my abuser. I don't know. I mean,
I think we should.
If the court ordered, there was a crime and the court ordered him to pay me damages, then okay. But you're being paid? I guess you're being paid not to speak out, but then she did anyway, so that didn't work. But what's the $60,000? It's not really for therapy. I mean, come on.
I know. I think that we have to call it the women's behavior too, and we need to. It's another place that I'm unpacking a lot of previous beliefs, but it is not sexist to tell women, don't get on a tour bus with a rock star or a very famous guy unless you want to get into a sexual situation with him. That is almost certainly going to happen. And if a very famous man who has a tour bus is inviting you as a young woman onto that bus, it means he's intending to do something sexual with you, and you're kind of I was going to say you're kind of consenting. I'm not going to say that far, but you're putting yourself in that situation. And I'm not blaming women for being abused, but
where are your spidey senses? Like, why are you putting yourself in that situation? Like, I wouldn't, even when I was young and sluttish, like, I'm being serious. There was lots of situations where I was like, I'm not going to get in that SUV with those guys that we've been flirting with just because they're hot and semi-famous and we think they're cool. I was like, actually, seems sketch, which isn't to say I was in sketchy situations, but I think, I knew better than to, go backstage or try to get onto a tour bus with that's, if you really genuinely don't want to hook up with a guy, then you shouldn't go on a date with him or get on a tour bus with him or go to his apartment with him. I mean,
exactly. And we need to be responsible for our behavior that way. And it doesn't mean it's our fault if we're brutally raped by that guy. And it's the first rule of self-defense is situational awareness and really trying to stay away from dangerous situations.
Right. And this is what I mean about, it's like, be prudish. Like, I mean, be snobbish, be prudish, be uptight. I mean, first of all, better safe than sorry. But, there's nothing wrong with being a prude. Like, if people call you uptight because you're not interested in group sex, I mean, be like, okay, then I'm a prude. Enjoy your gross sex. Like,
totally.
I don't feel any need to pretend that I'm into this.
Totally, or anal sex or whatever you're not into. If it doesn't turn you on, you don't have to be into it. It doesn't make you a prude at all.
Like this good giving and game thing that Dan Savage was always preaching. It's like, no, be uptight and about whatever you want. Like, you're in no obligation in any situation, including in a marriage, to try new things just because your husband wants to, just to, you know, keep things exciting.
Yeah, I hate Dan Savage. He is responsible for so much of that. He's the one who decided we needed to stop kink shaming, right? That was his column that was in every weekly newspaper in North America, making everyone feel bad if they thought someone's foot fetish was gross, which it is gross. And stay away from men. Stay away from men with fetishes. Like
feet are gross.
Dehumanizing you.
Come on.
Right. And I don't want to sound like I'm blaming these women. I'm saying as women in a women's culture, we need to take care of our little sisters and the young women and tell them, do not put yourself in these situations if you don't want to get hurt, and give up your stupid fantasies that some rock star is going to fall in love with you.
He's not.
No, he's not going to. Nothing good is going to come from this experience for you. And if it does, if you do something sexual with this famous man and you don't regret it, you're very, very lucky. But because of the power imbalance and because of what it does to the ego to be famous, you're very likely to be in a terrible situation with somebody like this who's into having extreme power over you.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been, I think, our critique of BDSM. This was yet another thing I was attacked by all the third wave feminists for saying, you know, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, forever, which is that, you know, sexualizing abuse is not good.
Yeah.
And this always happens in BDSM situations. I mean, over and over and over and over again, we hear the same stories about young women who are in the BDSM community, and then lo and behold, there's a bunch of abusers and rapists in there because these men are turned on by abuse and rape and power and having total power over you. I mean, I don't want to be a man, but around a man who's getting a boner from whipping me.
Exactly. He's a creep. He's a bad person. Men who get off on hurting women are bad people, and you should stay away from them.
Yeah.
They're not good people. And
a good man should feel uncomfortable with that.
Absolutely.
Not turned on. Yeah.
I think that we have to be honest about this. Neil Gaiman is clearly a creep. I think it would be completely appropriate and ethical for some woman to carve the word pervert into his forehead or tattoo him to warn other women. I think that's fine. I would be fine with that.
They're like, no jail, but a face tattoo.
Yeah. And exactly. Well, I mean, I think it should just be like community justice. Like, we don't even need to involve the authorities in that. Some women should just do that to help out other women. And what is wrong, you know, so much is going wrong that these young women can't pick up on the fact he is a perv, that, you know, even without the tattoo on his forehead.
Yeah, well, because I think young women have, again, they've been convinced that, sorry, I'm trying to stretch and talk at the same time. They've been convinced that, yeah, they need to be liberal when it comes to sex. And, you know, we're still in that, as much as third wave feminism is mocked now and treated as stupid and silly, you know, I think that we're still in that. I mean, you can see it in the way that all of these heterodox men talk about pornography and prostitution. They're still all very invested in, if anything that's consensual is fine, you know, because there's a lot of them are libertarian or libertarian in a lot of ways, and, you know, maybe conservative in some ways, but I think primarily libertarian. And so, you know, it's none of our business what people are doing in their bedrooms. And if women are choosing, it's all good, which is just, it's not the whole equation. And I think, you know, I tweeted something along these lines last night because I was sort of engaging in a little bit of a back and forth with someone about it. And, you know, I was like, it's not black and white. And the feminist argument has not been totally black and white, in my experience, in any case, with the women who are, for example, advocating for the Nordic model, who are abolitionists, who are anti-porn. It's not really that we're saying that women don't have choice, and that women are all not consenting. I think a lot of what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, women do choose all the time. They choose for a variety of reasons, often because they're traumatized. Maybe they're immoral. Maybe they're desperate for attention. I think they're making bad choices. There is also a lot of trafficking that's going on and coercion. There's lots of maybe different reasons, but it's like, but you have a choice and you're choosing something immoral. So how about you stop worrying about whether she chose it or not, didn't choose it? I mean, you don't really know either way for sure. But how about you think about your choice? And it's immoral to pay someone else to have sex with you because you know that they don't really want to do it. If they wanted to do it, they would just have sex with you. That's how sex works, or that's how good sex works in any case. You're both into each other. You both want to have sex with each other. So you have sex. You don't want to fuck me. What if I pay you? Then you'll fuck me. But I know you still aren't into me and you still don't really want to. That's an unethical, gross thing. So you doing it, you can't say, well, she chose it. Like, you chose it too. What does that mean? Like, why don't you be accountable for your choices and stop? You're an adult man and you're blaming some 20-year-old girl for the choices that you're making. Like, you have no say in it because your dick is hard. Like,
I know.
Come on, grow up.
Yeah. It's, things are so complicated. I do think we could feel the current swinging back into a more conservative ethos, and a more conservative mindset. And I worry in some ways where that's going, but I think it's a necessary course correction. And I think that it's okay to really call people out for their behavior. I think that we do need to start shaming people for it and having behavioral expectations, right? Like in polite society, this is what we do. We don't tolerate your cross-dressing fetish at our conference, right? And like if you can, we don't. Yeah, I have a thing about face tattoos, even though I think someone should tattoo Neil Gaiman's face and write the word pervert on there, but that is to isolate him from polite society. Like I think we need to start having more respect for social norms, and now is the time to start coming up with that, and not a legalistic way, but what are the expectations of polite society? Like what are the expectations of a functional society, and how do we convey that to each other and to the youth and live according to that in our own lives? And what would that look like?
I don't have a problem with tattoos. I have friends who are covered in tattoos and even friends who have face tattoos. And I don't personally have any tattoos, and I've never particularly desired to have any tattoos beyond when I was 18. And I wanted like Foxy Brown's Asian lettering on my arm because I was so into hip hop. I'm glad I didn't do that because that would make me a huge douche. But,
it was
it doesn't, I don't think that, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I have seen, I've seen a lot of like anti-tattoo rhetoric from men online who are like, men aren't attracted to girls with tattoos. And I'm like, well, first of all, that's not true, but
right.
I don't know. I think a lot of women who have a lot of tattoos have trauma. It seems like that's a thing.
And men too. I think having that much ink is a form of self-harm. I think it's similar to cutting. Cutting scars are like ritual scarification. I think that having a lot of ink is almost always a sign of a lot of trauma. My personal bias is on face and neck tattoos. And I guess I'm coming from this perspective of being a midwife and a medical provider. I think it's important to be able to be a blank projection screen in society. Like if you need to come to someone's aid, they need to just see you and be able to see someone who can help them. And I guess my question for you would be like, if you really needed surgery, would you be okay with like your brain surgeon having face and neck tattoos?
Maybe. I don't know. You'd
have
to put me in that situation and see. But I think I wouldn't mind. I think I'm just used to being around a lot of people with tattoos, maybe at this point. So I don't notice it so much anymore. But I'm open to these arguments.
I think it limits your social mobility. I work with a lot of different people. I know my very conservative clients would not feel comfortable if I had a student with face or neck tattoos. I think I think once you've taken it to your face, it's literally like in your face. I'm going to have to refine my analysis on it of why I'm okay with arm tattoos.
I'm interested, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm open to hearing it. I don't, yeah, I know that I'm not so bothered by tattoos as some people are. I'm not really bothered by tattoos at all. But all that said, again, I don't have any, and I think every single boyfriend I've ever had has been tattoo free, and I never even thought about it. It wasn't like it's not like I see men with tattoos and I find them unattractive. I see men with tattoos and I do find them attractive, but for whatever reason, it's always an afterthought that I've realized. I'm like, oh, this is yet another boyfriend I have who has 0 tattoos. Actually, that's not true. My last boyfriend did have some tattoos. They were sort of like random and stupid, like from when he was younger, but none of the other ones in my entire life ever had any. But yeah, I guess the last one had some. I don't. Yeah, I don't have a super big opinion on it, aside from the fact that I think that I've noticed that the women who are covered kind of from head to toe usually have trauma. I mean, I know there's that woman, Dita Von Teese, she went from being this like kind of BDSM icon. She has a makeup line. Also, she was like a big kind of, I guess, burlesque person. And she had a lot of tattoos. And right now she's in the process of turning all the tattoos black. Like she's just turning all of her skin black. She's a new Christian now also.
Interesting.
But I
That's
find that
happening
very
a lot.
strange.
Right.
Like I think tattoos are nicer than just turning all of your skin black with tattooing. Like I think tattoos can be quite beautiful.
Yeah,
Some of them
absolutely.
are ugly and stupid, of course.
Right. Okay, so we're gonna in our societal rules, we're gonna table face tattoos, whether or
we
not
can come back to this.
Obese children, definitely,
no fatties,
no fatties,
no freaks,
no perverts,
no feminist men. The feminist men are always a red flag.
Yeah,
they're always trying to sell. I think the thing with feminist men is, men always think, like men who don't call themselves feminists always say, oh, men who call themselves feminists just do it to get laid. And maybe a lot of them do, but I think it's more than that. Like, I think that it's that, I think they use it as a way actually to dominate conversations and to talk over. Like, I think they use it in the same way that like men who identify as women and are now, a special minority with a special perspective, and they're allowed to behave in misogynist ways. I think that's sort of a thing that so-called feminist men do. But I also think they kind of believe it. Like, I think it's like, Neil Gaiman would think of himself as a feminist. So all of these exploitative, abusive things that he was doing, they're okay because, he's against rape and he's like, believe women. And and he's pro-abortion. And, he's this feminist evolved man, not like these conservative, right-wing religious baddies. And like, I think they believe it. I don't think that it's necessarily an intentional lie to try to get women in bed. Maybe it is for some men, but I think for a lot of them, it's I'm different. So when I do this, it's not assault. It's not, that's something another bad man would do, but I'm a good man. So it's not.
Well, and it might be too that they have opportunistically internalized the equality.
Oh, sorry. I just read somebody corrected me in the comments and said it's Kat Von D, not Dita Von Teese. Sorry, it was Kat Von D. Sorry.
So men like Neil Gaiman might be calling themselves feminists and actually believing it, in that they have internalized the myth of equality feminism, and that there's no difference between male and female sexuality, and women and men can equally enjoy BDSM and random hookups and all of that. That very much benefits him to adopt that third wave, in my opinion, bullshit equality feminism rhetoric, right? Like that But if it benefits him to believe that, and there are plenty of academic feminists spouting that. So, I'm sure that was part of his game, both internally and the way he was, grooming these women.
Yeah, you're right. And that whole, it's the hyper focus on consent is big, because I think it's like, okay, well, I can manipulate my way into getting consent and then ignore body language or ignore whether or not I'm doing something ethical, but I'm all about the consent because I'm a feminist.
Right. And attract these like damaged young women who probably are already trauma survivors, who either didn't have dads or had terrible dads and are ripe for abuse, right? That, thinking that getting consent from a really damaged person in any way justifies abusing that person is it's very unfortunate that what got labeled feminism told men that was fine, that's fine behavior.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's so crazy. I wonder too, like, why is this coming out now? What's going on? Like, wasn't this a story last year? Why is it in the news again? Are these women pressing criminal charges, or is it just that more stories have come out?
I think that there's more allegations now. I know, I wondered that as well, because I was like, didn't we already do this? But I think more allegations have come out.
It's really upsetting to me to find out that Amanda Palmer played a role in this and pushed other young women into the arms of this creep.
I mean, I don't want to start throwing around accusations, because there's only like little tidbits here and there that have given me that impression. But I mean, with all these women, it's very hard to believe that they didn't know. And she certainly seems to have known the way that his fans were with him and to have encouraged it. And I think that they were into doing like sexy things with other young women together. And
she's she's much younger than he is as well.
Is she?
I think so. I
don't know much about her either.
I think she's at least 20 years younger than him.
Okay, she is 48. Oh yeah, because he's in his 60s now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, we have a kinkster in the comments. Finian is into playing games and doesn't think it's any harm to beat women who are consenting to it. So it's interesting. I think we need to get back to kink shaming. I think that women should be strongly encouraged to stay the hell away from men who are into that stuff. And I think women who are into that stuff should be called out for doing a disservice to all women by participating in it.
Oh yeah, I think so too. I've always said that. Same with like women who claim that they love anal sex. I'm like, no, you don't. Shut up. Totally. You're just trying to appeal to men who like anal sex. Like, no woman enjoys anal sex. I know some woman's going to come along and be like, I enjoy anal sex. And I'm like, well, okay, maybe you just don't enjoy sex. And so, or, like what I could understand. Oh, you enjoy anal sex because you enjoy turning your partner on. But it doesn't make sense to me that you would gain more physical pleasure from anal sex than vaginal sex. That's not how your body is built. Sorry, you don't have a prostate.
Well, and from a health perspective, I honestly think we should talk about how anal sex is not good for people health-wise. And I was just listening to a Louise Perry podcast about that, and I was glad people were finally talking about it. Of that, it's much more likely to cause physical damage to your body, to spread diseases that then get out into the community. Maybe we should really start stigmatizing anal sex again. I mean, like, do I think there should be anti-sodomy laws? I'm not. I don't think that that's the case. But
gay men like anal sex because men have prostates, so they can come from anal sex.
I know. And then whenever gay men moved from mostly filleting each other to unbridled, rampant anal sex with thousands of partners a year, that is what launched the AIDS epidemic. And it's okay to say that, right. that there should be sexual mores and norms to protect society. Do I think that we should make it a law? No, I think that becomes problematic. But Do I think that we should educate people that there are more risks to certain activities, and those risks then affect the entire community when the blood supply gets infected with this disease being spread in certain communities? I think that's okay to talk about it.
Totally. I mean, it's true. And anything that's true is okay to talk about.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I know you're not supposed to say that too. That another thing that I got to say on Twitter now that we're allowed free speech is that, you know, because I think somebody said that trans women have a higher rate of AIDS than what straight men. I can't remember what the comparison was. And I was like,
do they?
Yeah, because like if you're having sex with other men, then, you know, that's how you get AIDS.
Exactly.
Like that's much primarily, yeah.
Right. And that they have higher risk behaviors and they have higher rates of, you know, just disordered behavior. It's not an emotionally healthy, mentally healthy community. It's not a behaviorally healthy community, you know, statistically. It's, it's a riskier life.
Yeah, I mean it's super dangerous for gay men. I mean, that whole thing happened because of the drug partying, promiscuous, like it's, you know, a thing, like do meth and then go have sex with a strange guy. Like it's really dangerous for
It's incredibly dangerous. Yeah. And I don't think it was helpful to just destigmatize it rather than talk about what's actually happening. And you think, I mean, some of these guys infected 1,200 men. And the way we write that off in public health is, oh, we can't judge, compared to how we handled COVID. Just insane.
Ban them from society. They breathed on somebody.
Exactly.
Oh, that's a good point.
Just the way the pendulum swung to this, we can't critique people's sexual behaviors at all, or we're bad people, is hasn't benefited society.
Yeah. And I mean, I want to add too that I am judgmental of women who pornify themselves, because I think it's not just because I think it's bad for them, and I do think it's bad for them. I think it's really bad for your self-esteem. I think it demonstrates that you have low self-esteem. I think that girls who pornify themselves online are advertising that they have low self-esteem. And because, you know, if you have high self-esteem, I don't think you need that kind of validation from strangers. These are people that don't know you. You know, I don't get validation from people that don't know me thinking that I am something that I'm not, right? You know, I get validation from the people around me liking me and respecting me. And from liking and respecting myself, of course. You know, but they're hurting society. They're hurting other women. They're hurting girls, because they're advertising this and normalizing this to girls and other young women, saying, you know, this is normal and this is the way to feel good about yourself and this is the way to attract men, and there's nothing wrong with this. And there is something wrong with it. There's something wrong with selling pornography and selling these like violent, misogynist, degrading, abusive behaviors, sexual behaviors, images to men, and telling men this is sexy and women like it. Like, that's immoral. You shouldn't do that. That's bad. It's not just about you. Like, this is the lie. Women can choose to do whatever sure, you can choose to do whatever you want in your bedroom. Once you turn this into a product and you put this out into the public sphere and you're selling it, then this does impact other people besides just you. Come on. Like, people have such stupid arguments when, like, it's all cope, right? People just want their pornography, so they're just telling themselves lies and making excuses for it. But you know, if you're don't teach other girls and women to behave in this way.
No, I
don't teach men that women like this and that this is what confidence look like. Sorry, I keep interrupting. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I remember, I think it was in 2014 at the Earth at Risk conference, the DGR conference, seeing Cherry Smiley speak for the first time. And she was talking about prostitution and the horrors of prostitution. And a woman in the audience stood up and asked her a question of, well, I understand that most women in prostitution, it's not a free choice. They're abuse survivors. They've been trafficked. What would you tell the very small population of women in prostitution who are doing it as a choice, who say they feel empowered by it? What would you tell the women? what would you say to the women who truly are choosing freely to engage in this? And she didn't blink an eye. She said, I would say, make a better choice.
Yeah.
Because your choice is hurting all of us.
Yeah.
And that's what it gets down to. Make a better choice.
Yeah. If you're choosing that, then gosh, that's much worse, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it's hurting women, especially poor women.
You could do something else and you decided to choose this.
Yeah. Make a better choice. It's a bad choice. So the way it's being normalized through the international NGOs of sex work is work, we can't critique it, prostitution is just another job, hurts poor women. It hurts women in the developing world. I'm kind of obsessed with the whole monkeypox public health perspective. And now every time monkeypox is popping up, and I find it so fascinating on so many levels. So I was reading this New York Times article on a monkeypox epidemic in a country in Africa. I can't even remember which country it was. And they were saying that this, the case they were documenting was a woman who was a single mother who got monkeypox on her genitalia, and she was in so much pain she couldn't walk. She had to be carried to the clinic. And they said, like most women in the village, she sells sex to feed her children, and this is keeping her away from her profession. This was in the New York Times, normalizing the abuse of this impoverished woman by the men in that community who are working in mines. We could say that was also exploitation, but those men are making money, and then the women have no choice if they want to have any money to feed their children, they're selling their bodies to these men. And these ideas that liberal women are promoting, that prostitution is just another job, are directly harming that woman who, it's like, how can we cure monkeypox so she can get back to being, paid to be raped by these horrible men? It was, the levels of it were just so upsetting to me.
Well, and presumably she got monkeypox on her genitals from prostitution.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So she needs to, get back to her job that's harming her health. We need to help her health so she can hurt her health again.
Right. Exactly. Well, the way we're going to help her is they're going to make sure there's funding to get monkeypox vaccines out there. And God knows how, untested and dangerous those are, because they didn't exist last year. And now, I guess they're a few years old now, but so she can be sexually available to these men. Nobody's saying, well, how do we create an economy where women actually have meaningful employment? Or how do we create a world where the fathers of these children are showing up and being a good partner to this woman so she doesn't have to sell sex to other men to feed these children? No, it's all about, we got to make sure she can get back on the prostitution line.
It's a job like any other. She just needs to get back to work.
Right.
Obviously all women would rather give a blowjob than flip a burger. This is what I'm presented with also online all the time. Well, so would you rather give a reasonably attractive guy a blowjob or go work in McDonald's? I'm like, well, those are not the only choices. Also, most of the guys that these women are being paid to sleep with are not attractive to them. I would say probably the vast majority. Again, because if they were attracted to them, they would just do it voluntarily. And it's not men are so they just don't get it. They have no idea what sex is like for women. They think that it's the same for women as it is for them. And it's I get it. You don't have standards. You'll put your dick wherever. That's not how women feel about sex. Giving a man a blowjob that you're not into is really kind of feels traumatic. It's not nothing when you're being penetrated by a penis. It's actually kind of a big deal and you want to be into it. Otherwise it feels gross, and you're probably going to be traumatized by that for a very long time.
Absolutely. And it's hardly ever in a equal exchange where this man pays to abuse this woman and she keeps all the money. There's usually at least one other man involved taking the money from her, and not, there's so much pimping. There are very few impoverished women who are being prostituted who are keeping all the money that they're getting from these degrading acts. Yeah,
and I would rather work in a kitchen than give them strange men blowjobs. Actually, someone in the comments said,
hands down.
The finisher says, "I'll be making fries in the back if you need me." It's Yeah.
It's disgusting. Yeah, totally.
It's not, but again, those are not the only options
Yeah.
that exist. But when I was younger, I worked a lot of stupid jobs that paid me $8 an hour. I worked in a bakery. I have worked in cafes. I've worked as a receptionist. I worked in a bookstore. I worked in a video store. I worked at the liquor store.
Yeah.
It's like you just do basics when you're young. That's sort of the deal. You do basic stuff that doesn't pay very well until you can kind of advance to
Yeah.
something that you do kind of like or that pays a bit better, hopefully. But I mean, yeah, I mean, if you are looking for an easy payout and you don't care about the psychological cost, that would be why you would choose OnlyFans. I think it's bad for your spirit and brain. But okay, you got paid a
Right.
bunch. Good for you. Like, how do you feel
Yeah.
10 years down the road? Or how do
Well,
you feel a year down the road?
and these, these youth are already, they're so damaged by porn culture, right? Just early porn exposure is a form of sexual abuse. It shapes your view of sexuality. It shapes your view of yourself. So these women doing OnlyFans, many of them have been physically sexually abused. And then of that generation, nearly 100% of them have been abused by early porn exposure. And that's driving this too, where they don't even have a sense of what it feels like to have an intact sexuality, what it feels like to be a whole person who's not an object, who's not just a pornified sex machine to be paid.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, women's brains are shaped by pornography as well. It's not just men's brains that are rewired by pornography. The younger generations who grew up on porn, including the women, have taught themselves to be turned on by porny acts.
I know.
It doesn't mean it's good just because that's a reality.
And that's their idea of female sexuality. It's just this pornified performance. It's not even about their response, how they feel. And then you add hormonal birth control and you add the other layers of endocrine disruption. And what is passing as human sexuality right now is just a very diseased and sad state.
Do you want to talk about Gloria Lemay, or is it getting too late for you?
Should we talk about it? I feel like it's so upsetting.
I don't know. I haven't had a chance to look into the story, really. I did listen to a podcast about Gloria Lemay today, kind of about her history a bit, but I haven't followed are there criminal charges? She's being charged with manslaughter?
She's in jail right now.
Okay.
So Gloria Lemay is an elder midwife in Canada. And Gloria Lemay in the home birth world and birth activism is famous. She's like a very iconic midwife. She's the generation ahead of me. So Gloria Lemay is 22 years older than I am, and she's been a midwife since her 20s. So she's been a midwife for over 50 years. And she has been opposed to the state regulation of midwifery her entire career. She comes out of the early days of midwifery when midwifery and home birth and the freedom movement was truly a women's liberation movement. It wasn't about creating a medical profession. It was about women freeing ourselves from the medical system that was harming us during birth and taking away our power. And when I came on the scene, she was already very outspoken against efforts to regulate midwifery and license midwifery. So when I was in my 20s, I was on the board of directors of the Midwives Alliance of North America that represented both Canada and the United States. And Canada was the only industrialized country in the world where midwifery was 100% criminalized. They had no legal midwives. And Gloria was practicing up there. She's been practicing illegally her entire career, attending women's births, helping women have home births. Most of the Canadian midwives I knew and most of the American midwives, at the time when I was on the MANA board, there were only 16 US states where midwifery was legal. So most of the United States was illegal as well. Most of us were pushing for legalization, legislation to license us to be considered part of the healthcare system. And Gloria was always warning against it and saying, we'll lose the heart of midwifery. It will stop being a women's movement. It'll just be another profession. And I just liked what Gloria said, but I disagreed with her. I just felt like, well, women won't go to jail for being midwives anymore, and more women will have access to midwifery. So Canada finally, what was it, like the late 90s, Canada legalized midwifery, and Gloria was speaking out against it a lot. And from the very beginning of the legalization of midwifery in Canada, the professional midwives demonized her. And in the early 90s, she attended a birth and the baby died. And the professional midwives collaborated with the state to put her in jail at that time. So she went to jail for, I think, 6 or 9 months, and then was released. And the conditions of her release was where she could never practice midwifery again. She couldn't call herself a midwife. She couldn't attend births. She couldn't do birth education. She couldn't advise women on childbirth. And Gloria's reaction was, fuck you. I'm a woman. I'm allowed to birth belongs to women, and I will do whatever I want. And if women want me at their births, I will do that, because the state doesn't have a right to say who can attend a woman in her birth and who, where a woman can give birth. It's our sovereignty as women to give birth where and with whom we want to. So recently, last year, she did attend a birth for a family, and there was another death of an infant. And the family obviously is devastated in their grief. And the dad in particular was furious with Gloria and considers it her fault, and is collaborating with the state to take her down, take her out of commission. And
why did the baby die?
I don't know. I wasn't at the birth.
But babies die in the hospital
all the time. Yeah.
All the time, right?
Yeah. So Gloria has attended over 2,500 births, and she's had 5 deaths. So that is 2 deaths per 1,000 newborns. The national statistics for low-risk women in Canada in the healthcare system is 4.8 deaths per 1,000 newborns. So her statistics are actually better than the national average. Mm-hmm. But when a baby dies at home, everyone in the mainstream assumes it's because you were at home. When a baby dies in the hospital, everyone assumes it's in spite of being in the hospital, right? They did everything they could and it couldn't be prevented, versus these irrational, anti-science people stayed at home. And of course, if they'd been in the hospital, the baby would have been saved. So I was not at the birth. I don't know what happened, but I know that when people are grieving, they're really angry. It's considered one of the stages of grief, and the family's really going after her. So she is being charged with manslaughter and criminal negligence, facing like the rest of her life in prison, like 20 years in prison. And
that's so awful, because the family chose her to be there to assist with the birth, and then something terrible happened, and now they've turned on her like this.
It's similar to what we're talking about with Neil Gaiman, right? That, they'll have to, there's no responsibility on their end as well. I wouldn't say it's exactly the same, but the people need to take responsibility for their choices. Yeah. The thing is, this family hired Gloria Lemay. The most basic Google search of her name will show she's an outlaw. She's a self-declared outlaw, and she is very upfront about the fact that she doesn't play by the rules. She doesn't have any formal training. She has no, she has no credentials, that she is there to hold the space. She believes birth is a normal event and death is a possibility in anything we do in our lives, but birth and death, sometimes go hand in hand. So they knew who she was, and they were radicals for hiring her. And the fact that they're turning on her is incredibly upsetting.
Yeah. So how is there, I guess I'm just losing my legal words here, but is there a possibility for her to challenge the sentence? How long is she supposed to stay in jail for? What's the situation now?
No, she's in jail. I don't understand the Canadian legal system. I don't know what her rights are, but what I've been reading is that she she is being held without bond. They haven't set a bond hearing yet. So she's in jail until there's a bond hearing. If she can raise enough money to get out, right, she can be out on bond. And then she'll go to trial, and she'll be tried for criminal negligence and manslaughter and violating the court order not to attend births. So it doesn't look good for her. People ask, well, why don't doctors go to jail? And it's because the reason I fought for licensure as a young midwife, and now I'm reevaluating everything I thought was right and seeing the shadow side of everything that I pushed for. The reason that I thought it'd be a good idea to be licensed is because you're protected. Doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, licensed midwives are protected from criminal charges if something goes wrong. If you violate the criminal law while you're working, like if you assault someone, like punch someone or rape someone or steal from somebody, you can have criminal charges. But if you practice poorly and someone dies, it is handled through the civil system and through your licensure boards. You can't be put in jail for practicing as a licensed professional. So Gloria is not protected by that. And the fact that she was already ordered by the Canadian court system to not attend births doesn't bode well. I mean, I think that unless someone shows her enormous mercy because she's an old woman, she probably will spend the rest of her life in jail.
That's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think, hopefully we can keep following the story and figure out a way for people to maybe support her somehow in Canada. She lives on Vancouver. She was living on Vancouver Island, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was living on Vancouver Island.
I have never heard of her before, which I feel bad about. But anyway, I'm glad to know about her, and I hope that she gets justice. It just seems like such an unfair punishment.
I love Gloria Lemay. I think that her message of radical sovereignty to women is so important. And then this case is the perfect example of how most people don't want sovereignty. Most people don't want to take responsibility for themselves. They want somebody to blame. They want somebody else to be responsible for them.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it reminds me so much of like how I always thought of Americans as being sort of so overly litigious. Like I slipped on the sidewalk and now I'm suing,
I know,
It's
exactly.
Like, you always want to blame somebody else other than yourself, like you did something to me, you made me feel bad, you wrecked my life. And it's interesting because it doesn't feel empowering. It feels a lot more empowering. I think sometimes when I say, like, well, if I apologize to somebody and they're like, oh, it's fine too. And I'm like, well, like, it's not like I go around apologizing to people for no reason. I'm really sorry. But usually I'm almost more sorry to myself because it's a behavior that I did that I'm not proud of. Like if you react emotionally or lash out or something like that, I'm like, I know better than that. Like I know better to react emotionally. So I'm sorry to me, and I don't think, and sometimes people are like, oh, well, don't be so hard on yourself. And I'm like, I'm not, it's not like I'm going to hate myself forever because I screwed up, but it feels a lot more empowering and productive to blame yourself and to be accountable for doing something that you're not proud of or for reacting without thinking or being rash or something like that, because it's something that you have control over and something that you can change.
I think people are getting more blamey. I think that the COVID phenomenon really created a whole wave of that in healthcare. Before COVID, when people would come to me with illnesses, viral illnesses, I never heard them racking their mind of like who to blame, who gave it to them, who gave me this. It was just like, oh, you're out in the world, you might get sick, you're not. What I heard more was, oh yeah, I've been run down, I haven't been taking good care of myself, I missed a bunch of sleep, I'm stressed out, I've been eating sugar. People would look at their own behavior a little more. Now almost people come in with just the sniffles and be looking for someone to blame. And of course, that's going to be even more magnified if your baby dies. Whose fault is it? It's got to be someone's fault.
My computer's telling me that it's going to die, and I just realized that my charger's across the room, so I need to either plug my computer in or check out. I was like, oh, geez, why did I not plug my computer in? Should we log off, or do you want me to go plug in? Okay, then let's log off quickly before this we get shut down. Sorry about that. Sorry, everyone. Anyway, this was a good conversation. I'm glad that we covered all this stuff. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We'll be back next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm Meghan Murphy. This is Mary Lou Singleton. All of our links are in the show notes below, but find Mary Lou at enchantedfamilymedicine.com. Like and subscribe. Find me at meganmurphy.ca. Everyone have a great night. I've probably forgotten some things.
See you next week.
Okay, take care. Bye, everyone. Bye, Mary Lou.